Welcome back to my virtual diner. Pull up a seat at the counter, get comfortable. Most shows talk about the people, I talk to them. This is Real America with me, Bridget Phetasy. All right, it's back to school season, and in that spirit, I thought we would talk about the state of education in America. There is so much we could dive into on this topic, such as the introduction of AI, school choice, COVID, and its effects on students, parents, and teachers. The fact that math and reading scores are in a free fall, how Americans stack up against the rest of the world, cell phone bans, and what education even means today. It's truly bottomless, and it will likely require multiple episodes to cover it, and this one will probably spawn even more. All of this got me thinking about my primary and secondary school education. I loved school, but I moved a lot, which was challenging socially and academically. I went to public schools and private schools and religious schools, so I had the benefit of seeing all kinds of different systems. By the time I reached high school, I was partying a lot and it felt like jail to me. And I say that realizing that someone like Malala should punch me directly in the mouth for taking the ability to go to school and learn for granted. But I'm an American, and if we excel at anything, it's taking things for granted. I appreciate the value of an education, but even in high school, I recognize that the one size fits all model that we have been using for 100 years was outdated and in need of reform. The concerns I had about school 30 years ago seem positively quaint compared to the challenges we face now. There's a push to ban cell phones in schools led by educators and authors like Jonathan Haidt. Honestly, I'm shocked we even let cell phones in, but this recent panic about cell phones feels too little too late now that AI has entered the chat and the classroom. Illinois just passed a law requiring mandatory mental health screenings starting in third grade, which has spawned yet another debate about parental rights and government overreach. And I'm not sure how teachers are grappling with AI, which has upended, well, everything. I asked a young Gen Z man in college if he or his friends read books, and he said, "Why would we do that when we can just put the title in Chat GPT?" And then he remarked that ancient folks like me, who insist on reading for the sake of reading, is like someone defending traveling by horseback once cars were invented. And honestly, I don't think it's not like he doesn't have a point. Half of college students say learning AI is the most important skill they'll gain in school, and they feel that their schools are failing them, forcing them to choose between the most modern tools and facing academic consequences if they do so. Now, this could also just be an excuse for wanting to use ChatGPT to write all their papers. My feeling is that the whole thing needs to be restored like a historical home. Strip the structure down to the studs, its bare framework, remove all limitations to progress and creativity and the bureaucratic bloat to address structural issues, and add in modern upgrades while preserving historical integrity. I was thinking of this metaphor when I was home in historical New England, so forgive me. As we speak, American education is being reinvented. Support for school choice is a mainstream position now. According to EdChoice, 62% of all Americans are in favor of public charter schools, including 60% of Black Americans, 62% of Hispanic Americans, and 70% of parents. Donald Trump recently signed into law federal school choice legislation in the Big Beautiful Bill. Much of this, the dreadful math and reading test scores, which were already in decline, but now they're falling off a cliff, and the sudden drastic shift in opinion about public education can be traced directly back to COVID, when kids were logging into Zoom school and parents had a front row seat to what they were or weren't being taught. For many parents, COVID was radicalizing. They became more involved. They started showing up at their meetings. Many of them feel failed or even betrayed by the system and want alternatives. In places like Texas, where I am, there are so many alternatives, it's hard to know where to even begin. There's homeschooling, micro schools, hybrid homeschool micro schools. There are AI schools. There's a virtual school. And it's tough to say whether the outcomes are better or worse. An entire generation of kids is essentially going to have to be guinea pigs for the new American education system. Whatever it is, it's going to look completely different a decade from now. So much of our school system and schooling has focused on results and test scores. My belief is that we need to return to caring about process too. We should be teaching the Socratic method again and critical thinking, curiosity, and media literacy, not just how to read and write and do math, but why knowing how to do these things on our own and not outsourcing them to a computer matters. Writing helps me make sense of the world. Reading allows me to time travel or see the world through another perspective. Cliff Notes or Chat GPT summaries can't simulate the feelings a great novel can inspire in you, although some will push back and say that they can. Personally, I don't know what to teach my kid. Do I teach her to grow food or teach her to weld? I mean, honestly, I think either one or both will be useful on Earth or in an underground fallout shelter or Mars, wherever she might end up. I realize this monologue is all over the place, but so is this topic. And tonight I'm talking to Erica Sanzi. I knew I was going to mess it up. Tonight I talked to Erica Sanzi, currently the Director of Communications at Defending Education, an advocacy organization working to get activism and ideology out of our classrooms and political neutrality and the free exchange of ideas back into them. She's been on the front lines of this, and she wants schools to follow civil rights law and Title IX too. We will also be hearing from Bethany Mandel, who writes on the Mom War Substack and co-hosts its podcast. She also homeschools a billion children. Before we start talking to them and hear from you, which I'm really excited to do, some quick housekeeping. If you want to be called on, you need to be on Zoom, on camera, and you need to virtually raise your hand by clicking the reactions button. If you aren't on Zoom and want to be part of our virtual live audience right now or in the future, click the link in the description below to get the Zoom link below and or go to tway.tv/Bridget Zoom. The Zoom link is the same every time, so save it somewhere. It is our meeting place. Consider it your virtual diner. The voice of God you will hear is cousin Maggie.
Hello, everyone.
Many of you already know her if you watch one of my 17 other podcasts. She's my cousin and producer. We make a lot of stuff together, like our shows Dumpster Fire and Walk-Ins Welcome, and all the other content you can find at Phetasy.com. Maggie will be monitoring the chat. If you have something to say and you raise your hand, Maggie will message you privately to find out what you'd like to talk about, and she's going to help make sure we stay on topic. We cannot guarantee we'll get to everyone, but we do our best. Everyone knows my number one rule in the chat and online. Please don't be a dick. So please don't act like a dick. It's quite simple, guys. I don't have many rules. And now, a really quick word from our sponsor, Quest. Since the topic is education, how well informed are you about your health? If you want to make your health a priority, you can bypass waiting weeks for an appointment to see your doctor and maybe having to get a referral and see another doctor and go straight to questhealth.com instead. Quest helps you cut through all the insurance nonsense and get the tests you need when you need them. Quest offers over 150 of the same tests trusted by doctors, including diagnostics for specific ailments like STDs, chronic conditions like heart, liver, and kidney disease, as well as testing that is almost never covered by health insurance, like fertility and advanced women's hormone testing. Quest also offers broad packages of tests that go way beyond the standard tests you'll typically get at an annual medical checkup visit. Concierge medicine and functional medicine doctors charge thousands of dollars for these types of workups. Quest offers them for the price of a night out on the town. Your health and well-being is worth it. You can take these results and bring them to your acupuncturist or whatever. Visit questhealth.com and use a discount code REALMay25 and get 20% off your purchase. That's questhealth.com, code REALMay25 for 20% off. There's a link in the description below. And now I'd like to bring in our guests. First, we'll get Erica Sanzi in here briefly, and then we'll get Bethany to jump in. Hello, Erica. Thank you for joining me.
Hello, Bridget. Great to see you again.
Sorry I butchered your name. I knew I was going to.
It's okay.
I always panic with names. How are you doing tonight?
I'm doing great. How are you doing?
I'm good. I'm thinking about schools, I never thought I'd have to care about school. That's a funny thing about having a child so late in life is that I was like, I get to watch all these parents freak out and I have no skin in the game. And now I'm like, ugh.
And then what happens too is like the people that are freaking out or dealing with it, then their kids grow up and then they suddenly like aren't nearly as stressed out about it. And all the people coming up behind them are. So it needs to be a community effort. By the way, my sister just had her first baby at 48. So she's right there with you.
Oh, wow. Okay.
I know,
Yeah.
amazing.
Congratulations to her. And it's something. It's
It's
something we're
something.
doing now. So tell me how you've been on the forefront of a lot of the school stuff. What do you think is the most what are you hearing and seeing, and even from your own perspective, what's pressing, like what's most pressing for parents right now?
This definitely varies parent to parent, right? So for some parents, particularly parents that are stuck in schools where safety is a real concern, you will see that the number one priority that they cite when they talk about choosing a school for their children is safety. Now,
Right.
there's a lot of people that are probably watching who've never really had to think about that because it's just not a reality. But there was a fatal stabbing at a high school in Arizona yesterday. So for some families, like that's number one. The other
Mhm.
thing we hear a lot are parents talking about a lack of academic rigor. And certainly, as equity sort of became the name of the game, standards dropped. And what we saw was a lot of people complaining that there was very little rigor in their kids' classrooms. But then you also have the families that are still most upset about the fact that they live in districts where anyone could self-identify into any locker room or restroom or activity that they want. So if you live in Loudoun County right now, there's a good chance in Virginia, there's a good chance that what you're thinking about right now is that either girls are forced to use these what should be single sex spaces and they can't because boys are allowed to go in there. But we just saw too, like, girl was in the boys bathroom, she identified as a boy, she went in, she recorded the boys with her phone, they complained, and now they're suspended for 10 days. So I
Weird.
think it really does vary person to person, and I wouldn't be able to say what the number one thing is, but there are a lot of concerns. That being said, there's also a lot of people, and this gets lost a lot in the discussion, that are pretty happy with their kids' schools right now. So it's
Mhm.
not perfect. They're frustrated by certain things, but overall, they would tell you that their kid's having a pretty good experience. And I feel like sometimes they feel left out of the conversation because the two sort of sides that are screaming about things, neither side really resonates with their personal experience, even though their experience is not perfect.
Yeah, I had an interesting conversation with a woman who homeschooled her child for 6th and 7th grade, and then they opted to go to school in 8th grade, public school, and it was like day 1 had this kind of social interaction where it's just she was like, "Ah, we're in public school." It's just a funny, being a parent is so gnarly in general. Even when everything is normal, you're dealing with like the social stuff and the drama and all of the stuff that just comes along with the school and the personality differences and teachers. And now it seems like there's so much other stuff. Like I mentioned, the AI stuff and the cell phone bans. What are parents feeling about the cell phone bans? And that seemed to be, I always just notice when I'm home with my family, they're all pretty normy. They're not very online at all. Just noticed what they're talking about while we're sitting around at dinners or beach. And a lot of the stuff was just like cell phones, technology, AI. How are schools wrestling with this stuff? How are educators dealing with it? What are the conversations you as a parent are having with your kid about it?
Yeah, it's interesting. I just got a message from my youngest is a junior in high school now. And one of my frustrations with the school over time was that the cell phone policy had been really lax during COVID. So suddenly I'm like, why are my kids texting me during the school day when they should be in class? So I think most parents would agree that students should not have their cell phones on them in class. But the policy that I just was notified of, and I don't feel strongly enough to complain or anything, but is now no cell phones for high school kids at all from 8:15 to 2:30. So they can't have them in between classes and they can't have them at lunch. So a couple of things about this debate. One is that the debate never seems to differentiate between elementary, middle, and high school. And I think we're talking about really different developmental stages there. So if you asked me, would I want a 6th or 7th grader to have their phone at lunch? My answer would be no. If you asked me if I want my senior in high school to be able to have his phone at lunch, I would probably say yes. So
Hmm.
that's one thing that's missing from the conversation. The other thing I am seeing a lot is there's a subset of parents who are more worried about um, incidents like school shootings, for example. They have those top of mind. I don't happen to have those top of mind. So they want their kids to have their phones on them at all times because they're worried that if there were to be some sort of like horrifying incident, they want their children to either be able to text their parents, call their parents, or call 911. The other sort of more conspiracy laden thing I'm hearing is that they're passing these policies because they don't want students recording the crazy or terrible things that some teachers, a small minority of teachers, are doing during the school day. As a former teacher, I would not have wanted to be recorded in school, obviously. On the other hand, it is true that some of the most egregious abuses we've seen, we only know about because of recordings. So I think
Right.
these are nuanced conversations. Unfortunately, they don't play out in a particularly constructive way, at least online. But I would, of course, love to be able to have them because I think it's an important conversation. I don't think that there's one right answer for everybody. So that's kind of
So
where it's.
much, yeah, so much of it is seasons too, like the season that you're in with your kids. So even looking for preschools, we would be reaching out to, you know, different all different kinds. We just didn't we were like, let's just look and we'll get a feeling and see what's best. I know nothing. And one school, emailed us back and they're like, we look forward to meeting you. And then I had the name and then she, her. And I was like, nope. Nope. I don't want that stuff around my literally not even 3-year-old at the time. So I was like, I don't.
Bridget, there would also probably be lessons on that. It's not just that it's in the signature line, it's that that's an indication of an ideology that is very likely to make its way into the content and the conversations and the curriculum. So I would have had the same exact response.
Right.
Um, and it is different too, because if you have high school kids who you sort of know that are already very well inoculated against some of this stuff,
Right.
then they just blow it off, they laugh it off, they think it's stupid, they don't care. But
Right.
if you have a child that you know is very vulnerable to these ideologies, or maybe has already gotten caught up in them, then seeing those pronouns for you is like a 5 alarm fire that you feel like you have to get your child away from. So to your point too about it's not just that it's seasons, it's what kind of kid do I have? How likely is this to be an issue for them? Can we manage this, or is this a deal breaker?
Yeah, I got to the point where I just straight up started asking the first question on on the tours. I was like, "Do you teach the toddlers this weird gender stuff?" And they would be like, "Wow, okay, right to the point." I'm like, "Why even give me the tour if the answer is yes to that question?" I'm just trying to save everyone's time. And that does get me thinking too about these mental health screenings. You wrote about this, so I'm really interested in your perspective on this as well.
Yeah, I have this belief that schools' plates are way too full. The plates of teachers and educators are just like overflowing
Yeah.
with a lot of things that have nothing to do with their basic fundamental responsibility, which is teaching the subject that they were hired to teach. So, number one, I think the mental health screeners are wrong because the plates are too full, but also because this is literally saying we are going to have unlicensed people screening asymptomatic children.
Yeah.
So that's like a nightmare. And also it's like there is nowhere way that leads anywhere good. It isn't like they're flagging students because there is a concern and they're bringing the parents in and they're beginning to figure out what's going on. This is every kid.
Yeah,
Now, I
that's
have heard
crazy.
stories from parents where they decide to give some survey to kids, and the kid is like was up super late at hockey practice, or he's really tired, he's not feeling well, and next thing you know, his answers lead some dum dum to think, oh my goodness, he's at risk of suicide, and they call the
Right.
parents, and the parents, I'm not kidding you, go speeding down to the school because they're being told by some clueless person that their child is suicidal, when that is like the furthest thing from what was actually going on. So that's one problem, right? The other problem is it's total government overreach. Like, what are you thinking saying you're mandating screeners for every single child? And also in the third grade. And then the last thing I would say is, like, this is a program that should be opt-in. If they're going to do it,
Right.
which they should not. This should be the kind of thing that if you as a family, you want these screeners given to your children that ask your kids questions that are often highly invasive and highly intrusive and sometimes scary because they ask questions about suicide to young kids, I would say, but so yes, can parents opt out of these? They can by law, but nobody is going to go out of their way to make sure that every parent knows that they can opt out or to facilitate that opt out process, which I think is another huge red flag. The last thing I would say is one of the doctors who helped write these screeners and develop this, not write the screener, develop the program. She compared these to vision and hearing screenings.
Wow. That's
And
crazy.
to me, you're taking two of the most objective tests, hearing and vision, and you're equating them to the most subjective test, which is the mental health of a third grader who you barely even know. And by the way, these would be mandatory every year, starting in third grade through 12th grade.
This is a
Just
little bit when the state
terrible.
comes for your kid, you know? It feels a little bit like,
And
what are you doing? What are you even trying to plant in their heads? I don't understand. It does how are you getting a sense for how people in Illinois are feeling about this?
my understanding is that the backlash has been pretty massive. Now, what I would say, to be fair, is I do think that most people who support these kinds of things truly believe they're doing the right thing and that they
Yeah.
think that they're helping and they think that they're going to help, you know, catch somebody who could be headed for trouble. So it's not that I think that this is insidious um, in terms of intentions from most people. I
And
just think now that the evidence is overwhelming that despite any good intentions, this obsession with mental health in schools, this obsession with making kids think about themselves, reflect on themselves, talk about their feelings, it is not helping. It is actually making things worse. And every data point kind of tells us that. So I think people need to sort of let off the gas and just acknowledge that, like, this just isn't the proper role and it's not helping. And again, does the school need to be a safety net for children in crisis and for children that are really struggling? Of course they do. But that does not mean that it's okay to make it the default for all kids.
yeah, I mean, I agree that it's not insidious perhaps by the people who are going along with it. I do think people who push it, there is a little bit more of a ulterior motive. You know, there
Well,
does feel like a little bit more government coming between a parent and the kid.
no, that I agree with, because oftentimes there are people who work in schools who assume that a person like me who's against these screeners, that that makes me like a bad, dangerous person. So
Right.
if they see themselves as sort of saving their students from these evil, dangerous, harmful parents who aren't on board with gender ideology or aren't on board with these screeners. So
Right.
there's that. The other thing that I do think it can make you feel like a conspiracy theorist, but I think it's fair to ask questions, is when you see these programs emanating from people and influencers who have ties to, whether it's like big pharma or whether it's like something where you're thinking to yourself, I hate to think this, but like, is there a reason why they want to get all these kids into this pipeline? You know, is there
Mm,
something in it for them? I don't tend to think that way. And I'm not even sure that I would say that I think that's at play with these mental health screeners in Illinois, but I do think it's a fair question based on what we've seen with the youth gender medicine scandal and now
yeah.
with what we see with this new trend to sort of decide in the name of, they even said, in the name of inclusion and belonging, we're going to screen every single person's child
Yeah.
for some sort of like mental health disorder.
Every
No.
time I hear like diversity, equity, inclusion, I'm like, red flag.
Which is a shame, because there was a time, and you probably remember, I certainly do because I'm older, where like the words just didn't really mean what they mean now.
Right.
I
No, they
mean,
meant
back
what they meant.
when equity was first introduced to me, it was not every kid needs the same thing. So you have to give them what they need. So it meant the accelerated reader is going to get much harder texts, and the struggling reader is going to get remediation, intervention, and obviously texts that are more
Yeah.
accessible to them. That was equity. It just meant we can't all do the same exact thing. It was like I can't do the same math problems as all the really smart kids in my class.
Yeah, it
Equity
didn't mean
was
math is
Give
racist.
Erica the easier math problems.
Right.
That's not what it has. It has turned into this terrible equal outcome, lowering of standards,
Yeah, math is
catastrophe,
racist.
catastrophe. And when you worked in schools a long time ago, as I did, and then you see them now, it'll break your heart because they become schools that you knew really well and that you thought served kids really well become unrecognizable when this ideology and these practices sort of steamroll their way in.
Yeah, and it gets to like get rid of the gifted programs. We got to bring Bethany in. Let's bring Bethany Mandel in. She has written about this ad nauseum and also fought on the front lines of the mom wars. Bethany, welcome.
So I have to tell you, you were talking about your preschool tours.
Oh yeah.
So I almost put one of my children into a homeschool co-op, and then on the application, she's going into first grade, and it asked what her gender identity is, if she's male, female, or non-binary, and then asked how do we as parents in our lives work to deconstruct systems of oppression.
Oh Jesus.
I was like, I don't.
Yeah, they just
I assembled a much more coherent answer, and I was like really hopeful that I could like make these people see the light, and so I like got into this like extended dialogue with them. It was misguided, and my husband Seth, made me see the light, and he said, "Do you want her to be friends with boys who wear dresses?" And I said, "No." He said, "Then what are we doing here?" Like,
yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
okay, that's fair. Because I wanted her to have the social. And then he was like, "But
Yeah.
do you want her to have the social with those kids?" And I was like, "No, I don't.
That's the
Thank you,
hard
honey."
thing when they're
So
so little. They're
even
so
the person who wrote the
little.
literal book on this stuff is
Yeah.
still like, this is awful. Just leave
Yeah.
me alone. But yeah, so it's
So
everywhere.
you homeschool,
Yeah.
and how does that even work with
So
six
that was
kids?
just like a 1 day a week drop in homeschool kid hangout. It was like
Right.
a co-op micro school situation.
But you homeschool your
Yeah, yeah,
kids.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So I have 6 children, 4 of whom are school age. So my oldest is going into 6th grade. Okay, let me see if I can do this. Sixth, fifth, third, first. And then I have a preschool kid and then like a 2-year-old. And I'm like the least type A person on the planet, but I have a pretty serious schedule at this point.
Mhm.
Because everyone has their like, this person does art, this person does music. Like I have to figure out all the times in the day to fit all the things. And then everyone has their to-do list that they do every day.
And how do you manage it? How did you learn how to do it? I wouldn't even know where to begin.
So it's like parenting. It starts very easy and it's a slow ramp to having 4 children who are all homeschooling. So this is my 7th year homeschooling. And so, the first year when I only had one kid homeschooling, I used like one of those box curriculums that, you print everything and it tells you what to do and how to do it. And now this is my 7th year and I don't need that anymore. We use one thing for math, another thing for history. We're dabbling a little bit in this science. We're going to do like a music curriculum for a little while. I picked out books for art. But all of it is like, a series of trial and error. And it was, my first year, I only had one kid homeschooling. And then my second year, I had 2 kids homeschooling. And that was the case for a couple years. I only had 2 kids homeschooling. But it's a slow build. But I'm comforted by the fact that I'm smarter than 95% of teachers that I know. So, like, I'm okay. It's okay.
Do you how do you do like the social, it's always like, oh, the
Well,
socializing. What do we do? I know with the big family, my sibling, I'm the oldest of five, so my
yeah,
siblings and I were just like a pack. We still, they're mostly still my best friends, and I have friends, but you don't
it's
need that
different.
many friends when you have a huge family. But for somebody like my daughter, who's an only child, unfortunately, it's like, what do you do if you're a
Yeah.
parent who's interested in homeschooling?
So this was part of my like 1 day a week drop-in thing that I was like really excited about because I wanted this opportunity for her. Um, so it's again, it's like dabbling here and there. So I'm on like a bunch of listservs and Facebook groups, and you get to know people over the years. And so like on one listserv that I'm on of Catholic homeschool moms, why am I on that? But they're all people who align with me more or less on worldview. And a mom emailed and said she's putting together a pickup game for preteen girls on to do volleyball on Monday nights. And I was like, sure. Another mom is doing a Jane Austen book club for preteen girls, and I was like, great, we'll do that too. Um, so there's like a lot of that kind of stuff. And then they do some classes. They do Taekwondo and pottery and art and Shakespeare. And um, that's what helps like having everything written down because I can kind of see like, oh, this kid doesn't have any other activities outside the house. I need to figure that out for that kid. But it's nice because we live in like a pretty tight-knit, like Orthodox Jewish community. And so everyone lives within walking distance of us. And so it happens. My older three kids leave the house on Shabbat and I don't see them the rest of the day. They
Mhm.
go to one person's house, they go to another person's house. And then I prioritize camp also. Camp is like a really big, and it's like $30,000 a summer. It's really no joke.
Wow,
Um, yeah, between four kids, well, five kids this year I had at camp at some way or the other.
crazy.
Um, and that's how they make friends. And then we keep those friends the whole year. And I have a literal list of every single one of my children's friends. And when they say they want to hang out with someone, I go consult my list of like, oh, you could go hang out with Shlomo or Ezra or whoever.
Yeah. What do you think about school choice and all of the battles? And I know you've been writing and thinking and talking about all this stuff.
It's interesting. So I have heard from a lot of parents that like kind of like more money, more problems,
Hmm.
more government involvement, not good. Um, but I like as a taxpayer, I'm paying not an insignificant amount of money for schools that I'm not using.
Right.
And it would be very nice if I could use, I mean, if I did the math, so we have four children this year who are homeschooling. If we lived in Florida, first of all, we wouldn't be paying income tax, but we would we would have an extra $40,000 a year to work with
Right.
classes, swim lessons, like the number of things that you can use that money for in Florida is really big.
Hmm.
And so I ran the math recently. I was like, ooh, man, that would that would really come in handy. So the big beautiful bill, I wrote about it actually, like the choice component of it for the Washington Examiner. I think it's really interesting. I'm in favor. I'm not I think that the homeschool the Homeschool Legal Defense Association is really powerful. And they are pretty good at swatting down attempts at meddling in our
Yeah.
business.
I was listening to the Daily today actually because someone forwarded it to me knowing I was doing this topic. And can we get that little soundbite about this? Does seem to be um which topic? It's the demographic divides.
Okay.
It's
That's element
element
one.
one. Yeah, it was interesting. I just want to play it for our viewers.
Okay, Sam, will you roll element one, please?
Really interesting is that it cuts across demographic divides. What the data shows is that schools are losing population in low-income urban neighborhoods in Orlando and also in some of the affluent suburban areas near the theme parks. And that's what I'm finding as I go out across the country and talk to parents who are either using some form of a private school voucher or want to be. They're not down the line Republicans in any way. They really run the gamut in terms of their political identity, their race, their class. And they have a lot of different reasons for why they would like to use a voucher.
Yeah, this is fascinating to me because it's generally an area that is thought of as like Republican, school choice, Republican. And Erica, feel free to jump in on this too. It's one of these things that you're like, oh, the school choice, those weird Republicans, but it's actually quite popular just all across the board.
Yeah, this has been a frustration of mine for over a decade, because it's been an example, kind of like the quintessential example of how and each party takes voters for granted, but we're talking right now about Democrats taking voters for granted. So the numbers are actually more overwhelming if you only poll parents. So for Black and Hispanic parents, they support and approve of all forms of school choice by over 75%. Like they are
Yeah.
just all in on that. The lowest numbers of people who approve of it happen to be white voters, and then obviously white liberals basically hate it. So, but it's been the kind of thing where, because they just sort of knew that they had those voters in the bag, they would ignore them on this issue and side with the unions, and the unions hate all versions of school choice. I mean, they
Right.
lobby really, really hard against it. And until the COVID happened, Democrats had a 21, I think it was a 21-point advantage on the issue of education. So, you rank different things, and national security, sometimes Republicans do better, and then Democrats did better on education. The gap is like either narrowed down to something like 6 points, or it may have now closed. So what we're seeing is like a shift where I think nobody can really take voters for granted anymore. We saw that
That's
realignment
good.
is happening. And just to give an example, there's a guy named Jorge Alorza. He was the mayor of Providence, and I live in Rhode Island. And he is a very partisan Democrat guy, but he also now runs an organization called Democrats for Education Reform. So he was always much more of a proponent of choice, though he was much more sort of comfortable with charter schools, not so much private school choice. He wrote a piece last week basically telling governors in blue states, get on board with this school choice bill, because right now you're going to have all the Republican governors are going to opt in. And then you're going to have people wondering, who live in blue states, what the hell, like why don't we have this? And so for him to come out and say that he thinks that these blue states need to opt into this school choice program, that is a sea change. And I personally think that he's right. And I think that the governors who are resisting it would be wise to listen to him.
Yeah, I agree. I spoke to Nathan Diamond, who's like at the Orthodox Union, and he does all of the school choice stuff basically for Orthodox Jews. And I mean, most Orthodox Jews live in New York, New Jersey, so it's very pertinent for them. And he said, a lot of Democrats send their kids to private school in these places, and they're going to face, social pressure to support this from the schools because it's going to help these schools survive. And it's, to me, it's politically very stupid to position themselves against a lot of wealthy parents in the state, because a lot of those kids who go to those schools are not wealthy, and they need the support of these voucher programs to help those kids go to school there.
Mhm.
And they're also going to lose, like, I've seen it already in the Orthodox world, like Orthodox Jews, like people are just picking up and moving to Boca so fast that they don't have enough spaces in the schools.
Right.
There's not enough spots in the schools. And I think that, I mean, for a lot of reasons, New York is um, a dying place for American Jews. But if like New York doesn't accept this and Mamdani comes in, uh, New York is going to see an exodus.
It
Like,
feels a little bit like that two button meme where it's like the Democratic governors and they're like,
yep.
alienate minority voters, alienate teachers unions. And they're like, I don't know what to do because
Yeah.
what do
Yeah.
you do? The teachers unions are very influential.
Yep.
Well, they give I think it's 99.8% of the money that the teachers unions give to candidates and campaigns goes to the Democrats. So I mean,
Yeah.
they're just they have like a stranglehold over them. But
Mhm.
I think also that the you know, the unions are not loved at the moment. I mean, they've really taken a huge hit also since COVID. And so I suspect it's getting harder and harder to align with them than it may have been a bunch of years ago. One other thing I would say about this is that opponents like to say, oh, give me a break. You know, it's only 7,000 or it's only $8,000. And that's not enough to go to, because they're thinking of these very fancy, you know, $40,000, $50,000 schools. And so they're saying that's not enough. What a joke. But what they don't realize is that a lot, especially at the elementary level, like a lot of Catholic schools, they
Right.
cost about like $6,000 or $7,000 a year.
Yeah.
So a working class family might say, we can't swing 7,000, or even if they cost 10,000, they might say, we can't swing the whole thing. But
Right.
if we got
We can do
5 or
3.
6 or 7,000, then we could swing it because it's a priority for us.
Yeah.
So I find this a whole dismissive tone also about sort of like, oh, well, you can never afford that anyway. It's gross. And there's a reason why low income people and families that are assigned to schools that have been failing for generations, like they need escape hatches and they
Mhm.
deserve to have them.
Mhm.
And I'm hopeful for the first time on this topic that we're going to see a lot more families be able to get out. And the reality is, a lot of families aren't going to get out. They're fine where they are. They like where they are. Their kids are happy. They like their teams. They like the band. They like the musicals. They like their friends. But for the families that want out, they should be able to get out, whether they have a lot of money or no money.
Yeah, it was interesting in one of the op-eds that went down the is his name Jorge? What's his name? The guy from
Jorge
Providence.
Alorza.
Yeah. I went down his rabbit hole of kind of op-eds, and in one of the things he was saying, progressives are so pro-choice about everything. For Democrats to not be pro-choice about this is very silly. It just goes against kind of their entire ethos, and it's like the one area where they're almost anti-progress. But I do
It's
want
also,
to get to
oh,
some of we have some hands up, so we'll bring in, who are we bringing in first?
I'm bringing up Alex first.
All right.
She had
Ladies,
her
feel
hand up
free to
first.
chime in. Hi, Alex.
Oh, wait, I need to ask her to.
Oh,
There we go.
Sorry.
Hi. Thank you so much for hosting this conversation. I have been like blasting Mark Halperin every week to do something like this.
is he
So I
ignoring you? Because
really
he's just
appreciate
started
it.
ignoring me.
Yeah.
We'll just take this. We'll do the scraps. We'll rename this the scraps of Mark Halperin.
Yeah.
What Mark Halperin won't cover.
Yeah. But I mean, I think that this K through 12 education, I actually think is the root of most of the issues in our society, like politically, in the movies, in theater, in like so much of it has to do around this K through 12 education. Like I was just listening to Megan Daum talking to, oh, I forget his name, the linguist guy. And they were lamenting now that, thank you, that anyone can get a microphone and say what they want to say. And there's no gatekeepers now. And we kind of like lament not having gatekeepers because there's this time where certain people were able to express their views in certain ways. And then I thought to myself, yes, this is a K through 12 education problem because we stopped teaching the classics. We stopped giving kids classical education. And with that, we lost the beauty in art. We lost how important English is to the written word and the expressive word and what art's supposed to show. And now we have TikTok and meme culture trying to fill that void, and it's obviously falling flat. And then I think about, the kind of, to give perspective, I was a commodities trader on Wall Street, working mom. COVID happened, and I blew up the state of Connecticut. And I overthrew my board of education, and like I just became radical about education. And so the deeper I went into the social and emotional learning, the problem with boys in schools, the fact that every time my kid went to math class, he had to describe what color he was feeling before he did a math problem.
You're speaking Erica's language.
I'm like,
This is my language.
my kids were, I mean, I moved to one of the most affluent towns in Connecticut. We moved there. My husband and I are products of the public school education. We were the first to kind of go to elite schools in our families. We were believers in the public school system. We moved into this school district. We're like, this is the best, right? And we're here. And it's like, how is this the best education? Like there's they're not learning anything. They're not learning American history. They're not learning the like rules of math to understand how to get into higher math. Like
So are you homeschooling now? Because it sounds like you're a homeschooler.
so, I mean, you were saying it's so funny because I laughed when you said it. My husband and I are Catholic. I would say we're Catholic light. Like we are Italian. We were raised Catholic, but we weren't Catholic. And so now we're pulling our kids out to send them to a micro school that's associated with the Heights in DC.
Oh, I love the Heights. I
Yeah,
have
and so
spent
they open
so
like a
much
mini
time
school
trying to
in
convince my husband to send our Jewish kids to the Heights. I'm
Okay,
never going to
so
win.
that's what the funny thing is. It's a Catholic school. We have Jews that are going, we have Mormons that are going. We have
Yep.
like, it's just I try to kind of explain this to people that I had kids very young. So my friends that aren't there yet, I host like things in my home to try and educate women about what is happening in these schools and especially in blue states. I mean, it's people in red states don't actually appreciate how bad it is in blue states. And every time you say something to someone, their brain explodes. Like they're
Yeah.
like, what? And then they see it. And then it takes 4 more times of them seeing it to actually admit to themselves, like, oh my gosh, this isn't the education I got in public school when I was my children's age. But I don't know how to like get out of this rat race or whatever it is. And I'm sorry, this is like I've been dying to talk about this topic
No,
with
go.
people
I
like you
think
guys.
it's like
Um,
we're gonna have to do a part 2. I really do
Yeah.
think.
And a part 3 and a part 4
And a
and a
part
Yeah, I mean,
4.
that's my point is that the Obama dear colleague level is why we're seeing so much violence in schools and why like there is so much to K through 12 that is affecting every inch of our population in our country at every age. And I just wish more people would pay attention to that and realize that that is the root cause of a lot of our problems.
So
Yep.
let me ask you, moms who homeschool young children, how do you guys feel about AI?
Interesting that you asked me that because I just had an hour and 45-minute conversation with a guy today who's trying to build something in AI for homeschoolers. Um, he was originally like thinking of building an AI companion for students in middle school, and I was like, I don't see a market for that. But what I did tell him was I see a huge market in creating. I mean, all of us are the product of not a great education system, and it's just getting worse and worse and worse. And so it's the blind leading the blind, basically. And so one thing that I love about homeschooling actually is that I'm educating myself simultaneous to
Yeah.
my children,
Yeah.
in what Alex is talking about, the beauty of the arts, the beauty of mute, like all of these things that like I didn't get an adequate education in. Now my when she was in kindergarten, she can recognize Rembrandt from a gallery away and knows like, oh, that's his wife Saskia. And I'm like, how many 5-year-olds can identify
Yeah.
Saskia from the next gallery over? Um, but so I told him I think he should create an AI companion for parents, for moms, to
Mm,
help us figure out how to create a curriculum. One thing that I kind of teased a little bit is the fact that all this woke craziness is very deep in the homeschool world, and
yeah.
no one is aware of it, and no one is talking about it. It's in the curriculum, it's in the influencers, it's in the conferences, it's in the books. It is not great. And I talked about this in my book Stolen Youth that I co-wrote with Carol Markowitz. And I don't remember exactly what I said, but the basic gist is this is 5% of people hold this worldview and they put themselves in positions of power and influence. And they're doing it in the public school systems, they're doing it in the private school systems, and they're doing it in the homeschool world.
And
And
churches.
a lot of parents are not aware of that
Yeah.
third
Yeah.
Could I
component.
say one thing to the AI is I think if you are secure in who you are and why you learn things and how you learn things, AI is no longer scary. And I
Yeah.
think that's the tool we need to give to our children.
Yeah. We have other people. Alex, thank you so much. Will
Thank
you
you.
reach Maggie? Will you get her contact?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. All
Thank
right, thank
you.
you.
And if you're on Twitter, DM me.
Yeah,
And me,
DM me
and
too.
me.
We're gonna have a group chat.
All right. Next time I'm going to bring up Reynolds.
I mean, there's so many people who are looking for information on this stuff too. And now it does feel like what's exciting about being in Texas outside of Austin, there's so many tech people too. It's like the Wild West. You know, they started the new college here. the one that Barry Weiss is associated with, the University of Austin. They started. There's so many. Every day I hear the AI school is here. That I'm going to take a tour of just because I want to see it. Where they do like half of a day with AI learning, and then the other half like starting a company or something. I don't know. Like,
Isn't she in preschool?
yeah,
Starting
she's gonna be starting a company when
Sorry.
she's 1
I
years
bring
old.
I bring my kids to meetings on the Hill with me.
Yeah,
That's like
I
the cool
know.
thing about homeschooling and living here.
Yeah.
Like my 11-year-old has been coming to meetings on the Hill with me for the last year, and we were sitting in a meeting with a pretty prominent staffer, and he like didn't know, he's like, what happened to the ceasefire negotiation conversations between Hamas and Israel? And my daughter was like, well, the discovery of the Philadelphia corridor was really revelatory. I mean, like, and then she got into like the weapons that they discovered that were passing from Egypt, whatever. And the staffer looked at me and I was like, she is correct. I'll
She's
just
just
let her
been
take the
around.
floor.
See? Sorry. Let's just get our guest talking. We're just chatting.
He's not like on the boxy thing.
There we go.
Here he
Oh,
is.
you can't see him.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, can y'all hear me?
We can
Yes.
hear you.
All right. So, a couple of things. One is if y'all do move to a red state from the blue states, please vote Republican because I live in a red state. So we're always terrified when people up north move south that they're going to keep voting Democratic.
Do you
That
know
Demo-
that like statistically that's not true though? People always say this and then they do all of this research on it, and actually people who flee blue states and move to red states actually vote more red than a lot of people who are living already in those red states.
All right. Well, I
Just to
appreciate.
take away your fear.
Okay.
I'm
I
a
appreciate
registered
that.
Democrat here, so I actually do the opposite. I'm a registered Democrat in Maryland so that I can F up their primaries. Goes two ways.
But yeah, so I've been fortunate. I've always kept my kids in private school, and one of the things that they see is when public school kids come to the private school, they're the most appreciative of like, hey, we're actually learning math and science. My kids are like, well, what did you learn at the other school? And they're like, nothing. This is why our parents pulled us out. When I lived in Charlotte, our private school kept open, but we had a Democratic governor, so he shut down all the public schools for a year. And you could see the public school kids just playing it out in the street all day long. And I think in Charlotte, they lost 12,000 students who never showed up to a Zoom meeting.
Yep.
But
Eric and I were talking about this actually. Like in California, it's some crazy number. I'm not exactly sure of the number, but just thousands, maybe even 1 million kids who just never logged in that they
That
just
would have been me.
lost.
That was why
Yeah.
I was so against the school closures because I never would have once logged in.
But go on.
So my question is, well, I got two questions, but the first one is about homeschooling. I've always thought that people who homeschool, like I was a huge homeschooling state, but it's mostly religious people who do it. But y'all are saying that it's now like woke homeschooling. Like I've never heard of that. And people that I've known who've homeschooled their kids typically would do it and they'll go to a church for the kids to play activities and so forth. So I'm unfamiliar with y'all's homeschooling experience of having a lot of woke stuff like that. Just I don't understand that because that's just not my experience with knowing
So
people who homeschool their kids.
So it's not the norm in normal places. I don't live in a normal place.
Okay.
Did you hear the Supreme Court decision where they said like you can't force parents to read Pride Puppy to their 5-year-old? You remember
Yes, that
that?
was in
Yeah,
Maryland. Yeah, that's in
that's me.
Montgomery County.
That's
Yeah,
where I
yeah,
live.
yeah, yeah.
It is
You live in a
among the
socialist
craziest places in
republic.
America. So
You
like
live
when
in
I describe this homeschool co-op, like
yeah,
it's a crazy place.
yeah,
But generally speaking, if I'm going to generalize like homeschoolers, there are woke homeschoolers. Like there are people
yeah,
who are like, I am woke and I homeschool. 7% of homeschoolers, I think, would
yeah,
say that. And I think that's probably an exaggeration. It's probably closer to 3 or 4. But the problem is, as it is everywhere else in our education system, it's insidious and it is seeping into the top. So
yeah,
curriculums, I like will name names. Charlotte Mason Institute, their alveary curriculum, Bad News Bears. I was on the phone today with this guy who's trying to develop this AI thing. The history curriculum that we somewhat use, like we use pretty roughly, their new edition, I took a picture of their lessons on Columbus from their first edition and their lessons from second edition. Who they are different.
Mhm.
Yeah.
It's called Beautiful Feet Books. So there's another curriculum called Story of the World by Well Trained Mind. Well Trained Mind is one of the most prominent homeschool curriculum companies and influencers. And 2 years ago on Memorial Day, you should have seen the post they made on Facebook about Memorial Day. How senseless it is, how many children died in serving in the military in useless wars. Like this is the post they made on Memorial Day, okay? May.
That's crazy.
Yes. So this ideology has infected that a lot of curriculum spaces, and a lot of it is insidious. I noticed the Columbus stuff because I happen to have an old copy of their first draft of they released a new edition. And I noticed the books that they had in the first edition and the books that they decided, yes, Margaret, that is correct. The books that they pulled out of that early American history curriculum, the books they pulled out and the books they put in. And I was like, and so I bought it. I bought the second edition, even though I owned the first curriculum. And I said, like, I'd like to compare apples to apples here. Like, what did you say about Columbus in your first edition? And what do you say about it in the second? And it's a real difference. And it's not good. So I kept the old edition and I use that for a lot of stuff still. But the new edition is prettier and it has recipes. So I use that one too. So I mix and match them. So you have that problem in the curriculum spaces. But then you also have the problem in the influencers. And so they go to all the conferences, they do and so homeschool influencers are very influential. And they're promoting a lot of CRT stuff. Um, yeah. So it's a problem that not a lot of people are paying attention to. And homeschool moms are generally like really nice and, welcoming. And so they don't want to be like, hi, you are promoting woke BS. But a lot of them are. And a lot of moms are not, I would say most moms are not savvy enough to recognize it when they see it. And so when they see the new edition of the Columbus lessons, and I mean, it's that's what they've been doing in our entire, like rethinking Columbus, taking out Columbus Day. It's what they did in this homeschool curriculum.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
But so one other point, I mean, the difference between private school and public school is if a child's acting up or really bad in private school can just kick them out. The problem
Right.
with public school is you can't kick people out anymore.
Restorative justice.
Yeah. And one of my favorite shows is The Simpsons. In one episode, they brought in Marge and Homer to the principal's office, and they did a scone, like a sphere of bark. And the closer you're to bark, the worse your grades were. And they're like, "What are we going to do about it?" And they were like, "Well, what can you do about it?" And at the end of the story, the moral of the story was there's nothing they can do about it. So I think that's hard to fix a public school because you used to have, I don't know, they have them like remedial schools where they would take the bad kids and put them all in a remedial school and try to get them out of the other schools. But public schools just don't do that anymore. And if you just allow bad apples, at a certain point, the bad apples sort of take over and nobody wants to be known as a smart kid because they get picked on. So I don't know how
Yeah.
you solve that public school.
And this is like goes back to Erica's earlier point about just parents worry about safety in schools. People don't, they underestimate how much of a concern this is for parents. And I was talking to somebody recently and she was talking about how there are 30 kids in her kid's class. I'm like, that's so many kids. That seems like a lot of effing middle schoolers to have in one class. That's crazy, but that's just normal.
But
Reynolds,
you can't teach 30 kids.
no,
I mean,
I
my
don't know how
kids,
you do.
my kids private school, they have like 8. I mean, some classes they have like 9 kids. At the most, they have like 15, and that's it. And you have to be well behaved. They go to Catholic school, so if they get in trouble, school calls a parent, and it's, you know, as
Yeah.
Barney Fife would say, nip in the bud. Like there's this either self-correct or you're out. You're out.
Reynolds,
So
thank you so much
yeah,
for tuning in. We have a couple more people I want to try and get to. We're going to go a little bit long, ladies. Is that okay with you? If you have to go, feel free to go. You don't have to stay. If you
I don't have
either,
to do bedtime if I
okay.
do
All right.
this. And
Erica, if
so
you have to, if anyone has to bounce, you can always bounce.
Thank you,
Reynolds, thank
Reynolds.
you so much for tuning in. Who we got, Mag?
Okay, I'm going to bring up Jen next. We're going to try and get to everyone too. So just let's see if we can do it.
We'll try. We'll do our best. Hi, Jen.
Hi, how are y'all? Thanks for this wonderful conversation. There's so much I'd like to say, but I think as young people go through our education system, in addition to foundational knowledge they should gain as part of that, they should have the skill sets of how to learn and critical thinking. And my concern about AI is if you're just going to a source that gives you an answer, you are not learning how to learn,
Mm-hmm.
doing learning critical thinking.
Mm-hmm.
I do think AI could potentially be used to build some tools that would help with those things. But, part of why we go through school is the discipline of learning how to think and learning how to learn, so that when we become adults and we get out into the work world, we have those skills.
Part of the problem, though, I feel like, is that we have gotten away from this. Like, we've gotten away from this already pre-AI. Get it? We've this opened the door to using AI, because AI is bonkers. If you have to fact check everything AI tells you. It hallucinates. It's insane. You hear all these stories about these judges who find cases that are cited that aren't even real and don't exist. It's not something that, like, you should be teaching every kid basic media literacy and how to fact check things. But in a time where everything is up for grabs, there's no trust in institutions, there's no totem, there's no one even knows what's real. You're coming out of COVID. You're also coming out of the general failure of the education system, as Erica mentioned earlier in this conversation. These math and reading rates were already falling pre-COVID. People were already, I'll go out in airports and in the world, and I'm like, wow, our population is just so dumb. So dumb.
Yeah. Well, there's so many things they're not teaching anymore that it's crazy. But, at the very least, you should be equipped to be able to do it yourself if you have to.
Mm-hmm.
I think one reason that we're seeing a decline in what we consider to be critical thinking is that a lot of schools became very dogmatic, and you either had to say what they wanted you to say, or you weren't welcome to share your thoughts.
Right.
So it's very difficult to sort of like grow that skill and that muscle of robust debate
Right.
when only one batch of opinions are welcome, in that classroom or in that school. And I think that has had a very big impact on even the students choosing to, feeling motivated to engage. One other quick thing, just before I forget to say it, is that Reynolds, when you previously talked about not being able to kick kids out, federal law makes it so that schools cannot kick kids out. It's very, very difficult. And if a child has any kind of IEP, so any sort of special education designation, they cannot be suspended for more than 10 days total during the school year. So when you hear stories about full classrooms being evacuated because there's danger to the teacher or to the children in the classroom, it's not that the superintendent or the principal wants to sort of like keep this child that's got a clear behavioral disturbance in the building. It's that they are not allowed to take any other action. So, we've seen huge problems since the Obama guidance letter, and terrible discipline policies and just a million mistakes that schools are responsible for. But in some cases, their hands are really tied.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah.
I wanted to say one thing about homeschooling. My sister-in-law, She homeschooled all of her kids in Ohio, and they had a wonderful debate organization for homeschool kids. And if you don't have one in your area, I suggest you figure out how to get one started, because it was super. So it really did teach those critical thinkings and learning skills and speaking skills. And it has really helped all of those kids in their professional lives since then. So,
Well, that is one of the things too. They say it's just that's going to be a primary value for somebody to work, is to have these skills, because they're not teaching them anymore. And so if you will be there, I think this is unfortunately much like COVID, it's going to accelerate a lot of these differences. So people who are already falling behind are going to get left behind. People who are a little bit ahead and have an advantage are going to figure out how to use AI to their advantage to get even further ahead. It's kind of like what the internet did.
yeah.
All
Thank
right.
much.
Thank you. Thank you, Jen.
Thanks for tuning in, Jen. Come back and see us again.
We've got time for one more hand, I think.
I love this show.
And
Every time I get into the show, I'm like, I could do this all night.
I'm
Let's
going
go.
to bring up Ellen. Sorry if we're not going to be able to get to you guys tonight. We're definitely going to have to talk about this topic again.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Awesome. My name is Ellen. I'm in Arizona,
Hi, Ellen.
and I also work in a public school. I work in a pre-K classroom. And I will just say on a sidebar, we don't have any applications like what you had to go through of the answering all those questions. Yeah, we don't have that. But I so appreciate you guys talking about your experiences with public school, because it's very different here. A lot of this woke stuff is not happening here. You know, my kids who are, they're now, one just graduated college, the other one is going to be a senior in college. They had Socratic seminar when they were in school. You know, they learned everything. You know, our public schools, fortunately, they had a good experience. But I did want to talk about charters, because we've had charters for 30 years. So there is a tremendous amount of experience there. Of course, yes, they started 30 years ago. Now the ball is really going. And we also have vouchers. And there's a lot of interesting things about it, because even after 30 years of Arizona having charters, we are still at the bottom of educational performance. And I would love to know why that is.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
No, why do you think that is?
I am not sure. I honestly don't know. I mean, it might be just the terrible salaries that they pay teachers. You know, you can have 20 years experience in a district and making less than $70,000 a year. You know, perhaps. But it is also interesting because the charters and school choice, they do not have a level playing field with the public schools. So charters operate here, anyways, operate very differently. They operate very similarly to private schools. You don't have to be a certified teacher. They don't provide transportation. So that removes, since they don't offer busing, you can't walk down the street to the corner and take the bus to school, you know, and get yourself to school like we did, like I did in the 70s. They have like sort of fees that you're, you know, voluntary but not quite voluntary fees to pay annually. And if your child doesn't seem to be a good fit for the charter, then you're asked to leave. And I've had personal friends whose children have been asked to leave the school because, you know, they had minor behavior problems, nothing, you know, not throwing chairs or anything like that. So it's just an interesting difference between the two.
I find it fascinating too that there aren't real clear studies on how the outcomes are in a lot of these situations. They were mentioning that in the daily piece on this morning, that there's kind of two studies they've done on these two groups that they can even do studies on because it hasn't been that long, and they both produce completely opposing results. So there's not a
Yes.
real clear, and like I said in my monologue, there is a generation of kids that's essentially going to be like the guinea pig generation
Yes.
for a lot of this. Although,
Yes.
do you think that the public schools in Arizona are better or good because they were forced to kind of compete with charter schools? Like, did it force them to
Yes, I know
be
what you're
good?
saying. They're still sorting themselves out. I think in a lot of ways they're still trying to find that footing of how can we, because you have just a specific number of children that all of the schools, and it's not just the charters, you have the private schools, you have the micro schools, all of those as well, that everyone's competing for a finite number of kids, which I live in Scottsdale, which is upper income area. Our numbers are declining because families can't afford to move in.
All the
So
numbers are declining though,
yes,
everywhere.
I mean, it's just
Enrollment
population.
is down 2/3, like everywhere. It's crazy.
Yes,
It's actually crazy. Some
yes,
of that is just population, but some of it
yep.
is people are leaving public schools. And when I was growing up in the 90s, homeschooling was two things. It was generally fringe, super religious,
Hmm.
super crunchy anti-vaxxers, which were only on the left in my
Yeah,
day. Back in
yeah,
my day, the anti-vaxxers were hippies.
yeah,
And so that those were kind of the two populations of homeschoolers that you would see. And now it's so much more normie mainstream people
yes.
who are homeschooling their kids.
Yes, yes. And so that kind of leads into the other piece of it is we have voucher system now. Parents get $7,000 a year that they can use toward educational stuff. The Arizona Republic has reported on, misuse of the funds, buying Rolex watches, that kind of stuff. But I think generally, I know it's ridiculous, but but for the parents who really want to buy the curriculum and do whatever, I think that's that's fair, because like I can't remember who said that. If you're still paying taxes and you're choosing to homeschool, then you're entitled to the same $7,000 that the public school and the
Mhm.
charter school is entitled to. Except you're allowed to use that to pay for private school tuition. So I know of many very well-off people that also use that money in that regard. But I guess,
Yeah, I
they're
mean
paying
it
taxes too.
costs like triple that or at least double that. What they use per public school student is 15 to 20, $25,000.
Oh,
So to
here
give
in
a
Arizona,
homeschooling or
it's
private school family 7K, like,
well, no, that's what we pay our public schools.
yeah,
Is
it's a bargain.
7K. No, 7K is what we pay public schools. That's the same rate per student. We have a very complicated funding system. It
Interesting.
comes out to like 7,600 and something, 300 and
Oh,
but
it's
it's
different where
basically
I live. It's like 17,000 per kid.
no, and that's why if you have 20 years as a teacher,
No, I'm
you're
not
getting
talking salary. I'm talking per
Per pupil
student.
expenditure.
Yeah.
no, what I'm saying is that that's why teachers are paid so low because the school districts only get 7K per kid for
Yeah,
the
I mean,
schools.
where I live, they just give it to administrators and pay
Oh,
lawyers. So it's not
yeah,
actually going to teachers.
yeah, which that's too bad.
Yeah.
That unfortunately.
Yeah.
So that was just I wanted to just comment on that, and just in general that education is a very complex situation. There's so many issues. It's never going to be perfect. And it starts with the family and what's going on with the family all the way. People love to blame teachers for all the problems. There's so much more than that going on in
Yeah.
all situations. And everybody just has to do what's best for them. And that generally speaking, it all works out okay in the end. Like, people worry about, oh, sending my kid to public school and middle school, and it's going to be terrible. And it all works out. Everyone will be fine. So
Unless
that
your
was it.
kid gets stabbed.
Well, yes, we
Sorry.
did just have that
Interesting.
at a district.
I couldn't help it. I couldn't. It was
I
right
know.
there. Sometimes
Well,
the comedian in me always When?
Yep.
Well,
Until
on
you
that
get
note, we
stabbed.
should wrap it up.
You know. So that's it.
I'm sorry. That was
No, that was fine.
uncalled for joke at that moment. It was just
That
like a
was good.
softball that was hanging in the air. Thank you so much for tuning in.
Thank you,
And
Ellen. Yeah, no
ladies, thank you so much for being here. Please tell us where we can find you, Erica.
You can find me on X. I still kind of call it Twitter at
It's Twitter.
ESANZ. You can find me at Defending Education, which is Erica at defendinged.org. And feel free to look up pieces I've written and things that I've done. Also, there's a guy on here that you didn't get to, but his name is Jim Howard, and he is a superintendent in Montana that you're going to want to hear from at a later date. And he's asking if I could send you something, Bridget, which I will.
Absolutely. We will do another one on education for sure. It's just, like I said, it's a bottomless topic. I didn't even one of the things I didn't even touch on researching this topic is just how much money people are spending on back to school supplies this year because of tariffs and all that. It's like crazy how expensive everything is. And I would like to hear
Walmart.com.
from
Yes,
people
and
about
since
that.
they asked you to buy each person to buy 14 glue sticks, can add up.
It's that time of year where all the teachers are on GoFundMe and you're like, what is happening?
And I feel kind of guilty
Bethany?
now because my youngest is a junior in high school, so I'm not even buying school supplies.
Walmart.com.
Just go to GoFundMe and find a teacher who needs their school supplies.
Bethany,
You
where
can
can we
find me
find
at themomwars.substack.com, and I also have a podcast, The Mom Wars. And my most recent guest was Nikki Neely of Defending Education.
My boss.
Yes, one of my
Synergy.
besties. I love her and I love Defending Ed. And I have run into you guys a million times on the Hill, and they're doing all of this amazing work that not enough people know about. And you're like low-key saving America, and I love you.
Well, I don't know if we're saving America, but we definitely are trying to get regular parents access to people that can actually have some influence. So
Well,
yeah.
yes, but you're also like influencing the Hill, and all of that
Fine,
has
yeah.
like that is saving America.
Okay, well, okay, fine. I am saving America. Everybody. I'll just
Little did
say
I
it.
know, I had two women saving America on tonight.
Just one. Just Erica.
Oh, well, God bless both of you. I love you. And thank you for taking your time to be here. And thank you all for tuning in. I will do my wrap out somehow.
1 second, please.
God dang it, Maggie. All right.
All right, here we go.
Thank you to our guest, Erica Sanzi. Thank you. I freak out every time. Thank you to our guest, Erica Sanzi and Bethany Mandel. Thank you to those of you who showed up and asked questions. Sorry to those of you that we could not get to. Thank you to Two Way and their amazing team, and thank them for going long tonight. Thank you, Maggie.
Thank you, Bridget.
And thank you to Quest for sponsoring this show. Visit questhealth.com and use the discount code RealMay25 and get 20% off your purchase. That's questhealth.com, code RealMay25 for 20% off. And please join us next week, whatever day that is.
That date's correct.
Oh, next Wednesday, August 27th at 7 p.m. Eastern. If you're with us on the Zoom, it's the same link every time. Thank you guys for getting real with me. I'm Bridget Phetasy. Don't forget to tip your server and bring, some nice goodies for the teachers. They do work hard.